right, so let's get into it. So today we're gonna do some advection on hair, and I look at the hair as like fur hair, maybe it's grass, whatever, but it's kind of a hairish thing. But we're gonna call it hair because it's particles. Anyway, we're gonna get into doing some advection to the hair, and a lot of the similar processes that we did with the particle advection. So what I'm gonna do to set this up, I'm gonna create a plane. We're going to add in our geometry node, switch this to geometry node, hit N. I'm going to make a new node setup, and then I'm going to simply create a grid just like that. Add that in. Okay. And then set our dimensions 128 by 128 by 128. So the size is 128 by 128, and then the vertice count is 128 also. So that's what we just did. So let's close this out now that we got that set up. I don't think we need to come back to that because we're going to collapse it. And if I switch this to wireframe, I'll just show you what I did to the plane. Let's see, wireframe on selection. Yes. All right. So we just added divisions to this plane. It's not really important that we do this, but I like to put my hair strands on a grid like this, just because in the future, if I want to add some deformations to this plane, I can do that, because we have to collapse this plane to make sure our particles are read properly, because again, this is sitting on a modifier stack, and right now the program is still reading a simple plane behind all this. So if I go to edit mode, we can see that plane. So under the hood, this plane is still visible to the program, and we want to get rid of that so that we can read the vertices of and everything else of the grid that we created through geometry nodes. All right, so let's hit apply. Done that. Zoom in. Let's go orthographic view today. And then I'm gonna put this here, and then we're gonna take our particles, click on that, and then we're gonna add a particles, and then switch it to hair. I'm gonna set the length to 12. Starting out, and then let's do some setup. So with that being said, we want some dynamics. We also want to set up the emission. That's what it was. So we got the emission. Let's see what we can do here. Segments, I'll turn it up to 6 just to make sure it's smooth, instead of 5. Seed, I'm gonna leave it at that, 1024. I'm gonna turn off random order, see what we get here, kind of look. And then let's go to faces and set that faces to vertices. And then I'm going to set it to use modifier stack also. And that's just going to make sure if we add any future modifiers, it's always looking after the modifier stack. All right, so we're going to set it to random order. Let's set it to 2048 for the amount. All right, so we got a nice even distribution of the hair strands. And then now we're going to set up, so we got the dynamic set up. All right. And then we're going to set up the children also. So we're going to set it to simple for now. No, actually interpolation. That's what I usually use. Interpolation. And I just explained this again, if you guys don't understand what this part is. So the children will generate more strands of hair based off of each strand we generated up here in the emission sections. So for each strand, there are 20 strands of hair generated as a child, and then in the display amount, which is the viewport. And then when we render, 100 for each emitted strand is generated. So you have to be careful, because what you're seeing in the viewport and what you're seeing when you render are two different things. You're getting more strands. So you always have to consider that. And so what else is happening between the emitted strand and the child is that when one strand moves, those 10 and 100 children will follow what that emitted hair strand does. Okay. So the emitted string is the driver for the child, is to summarize it. All right. So next thing, we're just going to do some checking down here. We're not using vertex groups right now. We're not using textures. We are going to cache this once we get to that point. So the next thing that we need to do is set up our we need to set up another particle system. So we're going to create a circle. So we're going to go here, circle, just going to move it up. Look at it from the side view. We'll start there, click on the particle, add another particle system, and we're going to use the default particle system. So as I've done in other videos, I'm going to set this up as I do in other videos, and then we're going to start playing that. And while we're setting this up, I'm going to hide the strands because it's also simulating that. So I don't want that shown right now. So we'll hide that. And I'm going to turn the count down too on this because it's really slowing things down. So we'll go 10 for now. And we'll go back up here. Actually, I can leave this on 2048. And then in the modifier panel, I could just turn everything off. There we go. So now everything is playing smoother. And I'm just going to shorten this timeline just so that it loops faster as I set this particle system up. And then I'll set it back. All right, so let's set this up. I probably just need about 8 particles for this, maybe 16. And then I want them all to start on frame 1. So they all come out at the same time. And then instead of random order, I want it even. So they all come out at even parts. And then the lifetime, I'll set that to 240 because in the end, I'm going to set my frame range to 240. And then we're going to go down here to velocity. And we're going to turn up this velocity to 16. So as you can see, it's shooting out a lot faster. And then we're going to go down to field viewport display, as I always do. I'm going to set this to velocity so I can tell the speed of my particles. And then we're going to turn off the emitter to make sure it doesn't show, and in the render so we can ensure that doesn't happen. And then in the fields weights, I'm going to set this to gravity is off now, set to 0. And then I may want it to go faster. So let's try 32. Shooting out really fast. Let's try 16 again. Okay, so I like 24 probably. Yeah, that's a comfortable number. So I just want some speed, right? We want enough velocity. 32 is going to be good. We just want enough velocity happening in this simulation, right? Because this is all physics. So that velocity is going to cause that wind turbulence to happen when we do this. Okay. All right, so we got this all set up now. Next step we need to do is set up our fluid sim, which is the fire. So we're going to go down here, quick effects, while I have that circle selected, and then quick effects, and then set it to smoke, and it's going to create a box around it. This is our smoke domain, and now we need to turn our plane on so that we can see that dimension. And now we just need to position this domain properly. So I'm going to take that, shift it down, shift that down, and I want it to envelop the whole plane. I'm going to hit S, shift Z, scale it out, look at it from a top view. Okay, good. So we're covering enough area, and then that should be good. Maybe I'll scale it up just a tad bit more in the Z2. All right, so we're good with that. This plane is going to have to move down. So I'm going to turn on, I'm going to name these. Let's call this hair sim. And then we'll call this fire sim so we can just know everything that's going on. All right, so we're going to select the plane, go to my particles again, and I'm going to turn on the hair on the modifier stack for this so we can see it again. And then we want to bring this down so that it's very close to the hair. So I could just put it inside, but I'm going to just set it just a little bit above like that. Okay. And then I'm going to also go back to my particle settings, viewport display, set this to 1. So we got that set. And then I'm going to turn off this once again on my modifier stack so that we can get our fire set up properly. Got the plane selected, hit play. All right, so now we need to set up our fire. So I'm going to select the domain no, not the domain object. I want to go here to this tab, to the physics tab. I'm going to set this to fire only. And then under flow source, we want to set that to particle system, and then particle system again. Okay. Basically what we're doing is we're just saying, hey, The flow source is particles, and then the particle system is the actual particle system that I'm currently running. That's what I just told it to do. And then for initial velocity, I'm going to crank this all the way up to the max, which is 10. So if we hit play real quick, you'll see that it is now using fireballs. Okay. A lot of speed. Okay. It might be too fast now that I see it. So I'm going to go back and then turn this down to 16. Just like that. All right. So let's see what we get now. That's good. I like that. All right. So we got that set up now. Okay. I could increase some things too. Let's say I want to increase the intensity of the fire. So I can select the circle here, and then I can go down to my physics tab again, and then select size, not size. I can select fuel, and I can increase this too if I want. So let's see what that looks like. So it has more fuel. So it's just a little bit stronger. And then I can increase the size of the fireballs too if I want it. All right, a little too strong, maybe 1.2. Look at it from a top view. Okay. All right, I'll set it to 1. Yeah. All right, so we'll leave it at that. Okay, quick sim. Got that all set up. All right, so now that we got our fireball set up, don't need to do anything else. That's it for the fireball sim. So what we got to do with everything now is cache it. So I'm going to turn off my hair system real quick, and then I'm going to cache this fireball system. So we're going to select the domain object, and then we're going to go down to the caching area. So let's find that real quick. Cache. There it is. Okay. So we got to make sure we set our frame range to 240, and then set the end to 240, and then set it to the beginning, advanced, turn this to none, and then turn this to full. And this is just the compression and precision, and so that we're getting the full, a one-to-one look on our sim. So sometimes what happens when you run this caching, if you leave it on those settings, it won't come out looking right. So basically what you're seeing on your viewport and then what the final result is are two different things. And so we're just ensuring that we get a one-to-one result. All right, so we're going to set this to OpenVDB, and then all, and then I'm going to bake it. So I'm just going to hit bake, and now it's just going to run real quick. So this is playing really, really fast because we got a very low resolution setup for this this fire sim. And we don't need a lot of resolution actually, because we're not creating fire. We're just using this as a driver for our hair to be influenced. Okay. That's the whole goal of this. All right. So now that we got that set up, I can play it back. And as you can see, it's all cached. It plays really fast. And we run it cached because we don't want it influenced by anything else. So that's why we're caching it, even though it already plays fast in the viewport. All right. So I'm going to turn this off now, and I'm going to turn my hair back on. And then I'm going to turn off fire sim here too. And then we're going to activate our hair again. So we're going to go to the modifier panel, turn these two things on. And then now we got to set up our hair to be influenced by that fire sim. Okay. So I'm going to go to here. I'm going to turn off children for now, just so that we can have things play fairly fast. So if I hit play, things still play fairly fast, and that's good. So maybe I'll turn the mission down to 1024 too. All right. So next thing we need to do is set up a force field, and we need a fluid flow force field. And what that's going to do is tell anything that can accept physics to be used by a physics simulation that is running. So as we have a fire sim running, right? Which is a fluid. So that fluid, we want that fluid to influence any physics that are happening in this scene. And so this hair, right, we set physics to be on, hair dynamics, right, which is another term for that. So that's why we have hair dynamics on, so that it can be influenced by turbulence and other things in these different force fields. Okay, so now that we got this fluid field, we're going to assign our smoke domain object. Okay, so we need to use a domain object, which is the smoke domain. Now it knows, hey, It's telling the scene, hey, there is a smoke fluid fire simulation happening. Please use this to influence physics. So that's what we just did. All right. And so by the number that's good to start with is setting this to 8. That's what I found. So we're going to set that to 8, and then let's see what happens when we hit play now. So if we hit play, right, you see the hair falling over in all directions. And that is because the fire again. So if we turn that fire on, right? So let's rewind. That fire that ran, that we cached, is influencing the hair. So that's what's happening now. And so again, we're just using the fire as our driver, right? It's a control, and we're just hiding it because we don't want to see it. We just want to see the hair fall over. Okay, I can hide this. I'm gonna leave that on actually. So now that I'm running it, you can see it's being influenced now. All right, pretty cool. I love this. So now that we got that set up, right, we can start playing with our fluid field settings. So I can say, okay, well, let's turn this down to 0.1 and see what happens. All right, falls down much harder. It's more chaotic, right? Which I like. That's really cool. And it swings more. So if I turn it up on the opposite end, right, it's going to be a lot more tighter. So let's try that. So I select the fluid field and then turn it up to say 4. Watch. Let's see what happens now. All right. It's a little bit more stiff, as you can see. Doesn't sway a lot. All right. I want these things swaying. I want it to be chaotic. So that's why I turned that down. So I'm going to turn it down to 0.01, even more chaotic. And we'll try that out now. That's really cool. See, I like how it waves and stuff. Okay. Now I'm going to show you something too. So watch what happens on the side view. Okay. So if we rewind a little bit, and let's look at it from a solid view. So as you can see, things are kind of intersecting a little bit, right, through the plane. I'm not liking that. And the way we can fix that is add a collision object. So we can add another plane in the scene, make it a little bit bigger. And then I can set this as a collision object. So I can go to my physics tab, or not, sorry. My physics tab, and then turn on collision. So now I have a collision object, and I'm just going to move it down in the Z just a smidge. So now we have a collision object set up, and I can just turn that off, and I could name it collision. So we'll just hide that from the scene, and then I can play it again and ensure that this collision object works. So I can see that these things are bouncing off the ground now. The hair is bouncing off. So now it's not intersecting. You see that? So now it's staying above the ground and not going below, which is great. All right, so let's play it again. Cool. So we got a nice little setup here. Okay. Let's loop it. So we'll just set it to loop at 64. We could just let it loop. Nice. All right. So the next step we could do is work on setting up our children. So as we did before, we can give it more density. So I can say 2048, and then I could set it to simple or interpolate it. And now we can play it back, and now we have more density to this. So this is looking really, really cool now. So it has way more density. And it's just caching it on the fly right now. And then once I got my density set up, then I can cache this whole thing. I can bake it. So let's go to a solid view, play it back again. So that's what we got. Okay, so that's set up now. So the next step I could do is bake this whole thing down. So I'm going to set it to, let's go 128. Let's just give it enough room. All right, so I can go here to cache, right? And then I can just say 128 as I have in my timeline. And then I can hit bake. All right, so I'm going to let it bake. And then we'll come back and then we'll do some look dev. All right, so have the whole thing cached now, and I can just play it through, plays really fast so that we got it cached. And so now we can move into doing some look development on this shot. So, all right, so let's do that. So we can turn on our camera, select it, move it up, and then as I always do, right, what am I gonna do? Set it to 135, like I always do. So 135, rotate it, -90, move it up, start framing the shot. Gotta pull it way out, like right there, and then set the format of my frame up, 1920 by 1920. Gonna make another window here, zoom in, turn off these tool settings, and then clean up the viewport just like that. Okay, and then just hit render. Oop, wrong one. So I can hit render, go to my render settings, enable motion blur, film. I don't want a transparent background. And then now we can set up a light like so, move it to the side, rotate it up 90 degrees, increase the scale, move it up. It's very simple light. Don't need to do much more. And then we can increase the intensity. Maybe it can turn on some scrim. I'll leave it at that warm color. All right, increase the intensity, 64. Right, I could think about having a bounce card, maybe not. I'm gonna try this though. We'll just raise it up like that. Yeah, now it's falling off nicely. I like that. Let's go to a front view. Maybe I could try rotating it too. Yeah, I'm gonna rotate it just a smidge like that. Yeah, that's a nice look. Okay, cool. So look at this. We're getting this really nice pattern across, and I can move through my frames too. See that? This is all hair. And then it kind of resolves itself, right? So we'll go back to this shot. Okay. So next thing is we can add a material. So this is the cool part. So we can add a material and we can start playing with this now. So I can set this to shader, right? And then add a ramp, set that here. And then I've got to remember what node I was using. So let's set these colors up first. So I'm going to go extreme. We're going to go RGB, red, and then let's go blue. Yeah, blue. All right, so let's see, which node did I use? Info, volume info. Maybe it was that. Nope. Maybe it was. Let's try density, flame, temperature. Nope. All right. So I just discovered this while I was just playing around, being that I've done this with particles. So I'm just trying to, curves. I think it was curves. I think that's what I use. So I can set it to random, right? So now it's just randomizing those colors throughout. And I can get some other options, tangent. So normal, thickness. I don't think thickness is going to do anything because I don't have randomization on that. Length. I think for the most part, everything is the same length. Intercept. That's a really cool one. Is strand, right? So we're seeing the ground as red, but if we do an intercept, we get something different, right? So if I go to the beginning and then it moving, you see how that's happening across the whole thing? Really cool look. Like I play with different options too, right? So based off the normal, that's what's happening on this option. That's what's changing things. So I like intercept. I'm gonna leave it on intercept again. So yeah, I got that option set up like that. And then like that. And then, you could play with the colors now. So I could say, okay, well, maybe I want a different kind of theme. So maybe I want to go maybe green or a yellowish color, and then purple, add some purple instead. And then go in this purplish area. Lakers. So something like that. Right. But yeah, so you could do a lot of things with this. It's really fun. So again, this whole thing is still simulated. I got it all cached out too. So I can always play it again. And it'll play through. Right. And then you can render this out. So I always ensure that I got motion blur enabled too when I run sims like this. It just gives it a more realistic look when you have motion blur on versus off. So try to keep in mind that, like, if you have the power, enable motion blur. I mean, there's tools out there where you can put motion blur in post-production, but if you can render it in, try to render it in. It just comes out so much more better. And then for final renders, again, let me check my settings. So something like this, I could probably lower this to like 512, get away with that with the denoise. It'll get across. And then like the one you guys saw at the beginning of the video, I rendered that at 512 samples for each frame. I could have lowered it to 256 possibly too and got away with it along with denoising. So when it comes to rendering, frame range, make sure that's set. And then your output, I just, for myself, doing these quick little animations, I just have a set of frames in a folder and I just overwrite those. I just name them frames and I always rename it the same thing. And I just constantly overwrite my frames because I always have the 3D files and I just don't have the space to be stacking up on frames because it'll just fill up my computer, my external hard drives, and I don't want that happening. So as long as I have the 3D files, I can always re-render these items out if I need to. So, and then after that, it goes through Natron. And then I run it through Natron and just render it out. I just keep a simple node tree, calling on the color management system that's being used in Blender. So that's it. Hopefully you guys like this one. This is very fun to play with. Using like Advection on hair again. So again, you can do a lot of stuff with this. You know, I can start stacking up modifiers too, along with that. You know, in the previous video, I can cause a whole wave go across this and use vertex groups as a driver for that too. So I'll do another video of that too, where I can try to just do some waves across instead of having it being masked. So again, I'm just playing around with hair. That's kind of what I'm doing now. Did the whole advection thing and just now I'm doing like a hybrid of things and starting to mix things together as I learn other things. So hopefully you guys like this video. Thanks for watching and I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace.